The 2018 general elections. The issues that matter. The people that matter. This is Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan.
Good evening. Welcome back to Straight Talk, and we are talking straight again tonight with yet another leader of a political party. General elections coming closer and closer with another week starting. We've got National Federation Party tonight in studio. We know that people have been waiting for this over the weekend when we promoted it. When they saw the lineup of people who are coming this week, they said they couldn't wait for it. So we've got a whole week lined up for you so far, that the ones that have confirmed. National Federation Party leader Professor Biman Prasad tonight. Tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. 12:30 p.m. in the day, right here on VTFM and on Facebook, our page Fiji Village, we'll have Fiji First General Secretary Ayaz Sayed Kayum. On Wednesday night at 7 p.m. We'll have Unity Fiji leader Savinatha Narumbe, and on Thursday night 7 p.m. confirmed with Fiji First and NFP, a debate together between Ayaz Sayed Kayum and Professor Biman Prasad. So that's confirmed so far. We've got a few more confirmations yet to be made, and we're expecting that to come through in the next day or two, and then of course we'll bring you details. We've got the Hope Party also confirmed for the following Tuesday night, and that's with the leader Tupo Ndraunindalo. So on behalf of our viewers and listeners on VTFM and viewers on Fiji Village Facebook, Professor Biman Prasad, a big welcome to you, and thank you very much for coming tonight.
Pleasure to be here, Vijay, and greetings to all the listeners.
Now we'll get straight into it, and there's been a lot of talk about the National Federation Party, about a lot of issues, NFP going into this election saying that you're ready to form government. A lot of those issues that have come up through questions, through people wanting to know what NFP stands for. Sure. What are their issues? They want to know further explanation, and that's why you're here to Straight Talk with us this evening. We also will be inviting callers. You can call us on 3314-766. Number again, 3314-766, and you can ask your questions, and we'll also be fielding questions to Professor Prasad that you would be raising. Now, Professor Prasad, the trend shows that National Federation Party support was falling from over 40% in the 1980s to just over 5% in 2014. You did not win any seats in 1999, and going forward your support had dwindled. What is your assessment now? 2014, you had just over 5%. You managed to get 3 seats in Parliament, and you haven't reached the previous stage where you were on a 40% high.
That's correct, Vijay. And when I became leader of the National Federation Party in 2014, one of the promises I made in my acceptance speech was that I was going to change the National Federation Party as a party of the future. And I'm very pleased today to tell all the listeners and the people of Fiji that we have changed the National Federation Party to be a party of the future. Today, National Federation Party is a truly multiracial party. For the first time in the history of the party, we have our AGM, we have our officials, we have our management board, a very, very truly multiracial team. Wherever we go now, we are a party which attracts people from all walks of life. So yes, we may have been out of the game between 1999 and 2014, but I can tell you that in this election, we are a real player, we are in the game, and that is why I'm feeling very, very confident that we will be in government come election on the 14th of November.
Just going on to you saying that when you came into leadership in 2014, you had said that as you said just now, that you will change the party to become a truly multiracial party. What was the party before that?
Well, in the history of National Federation Party, given the electoral system we had in the 70s, in the 90s. Of course, Indo-Fijians could only vote for race-based voting. And the party, although it was born out of the struggle for justice, just for fairness and equality, it mainly drew support from the Indo-Fijians. But let me also say that historically, National Federation Party also had some very, very prominent Itoke as members of the party, as members of the parliament, and NFP was part of a multiracial government under Dr. Timothy Bavandra in 1987. It was an NFP-Labour coalition. So the party had a history of striving towards inclusivity, striving towards its goal of multiracialism, and the founder's vision for the party is what we still have, and we have not checked from that responsibility since its founding in 1963. And today, I am very pleased that I'm leading a party which the founder of the party envisaged and wanted it to be in 1963. And that is why
it couldn't happen back then.
Well,
because of
structural issues in the country, structurally, the constitutions we had provided for that. But even within that provision, the NFP always tried to be a multiracial party, and to some extent, it was, before the Labour Party was born, it was one of the most multiracial parties. So we have a history, Vijay, of working towards that, and I am saying today that I am extremely pleased that I am leading a new National Federation Party. If you look at our team today, the 51 candidates that we have, it is a truly multiracial party. It's a microcosm of what this country is now and what it's going to be in the future. And that is why I feel very, very confident, and I can say that we are getting a lot of support for the way in which the party has molded itself in the last 4 years and how we performed in Parliament and the issues that we have taken on behalf of the people in this country.
You're on Straight Talk. Our guest tonight is National Federation Party leader Professor Biman Prasad. You can call in with your questions. 3314-766 is the number to call. Now, Professor Prasad, who will be the Prime Minister if National Federation Party wins the elections? As some people are still saying that it could be NFP President P.O. Tikunduandua. What is the setup there?
Vijay, the setup for our party is that I was the parliamentary leader. I was elected leader before that. I am the leader of the party. And in any democracy, the convention is, if the party wins government, the leader of the party becomes the Prime Minister. Right now, our focus is to go and tell the people what we stand for, what are our policies, and our objective is to be in government. And that's where our focus is, and that's what we're doing right now.
Looking at your broad policies that you've announced, of course, we'll be asking you about when your manifesto is coming out.
Sure.
Only party that has released its full manifesto so far is Sodelpa last Saturday. In the broad policies that you've announced, and I'll go through some of the issues that you've said, and if you can clarify it for our listeners, there's been a lot of questions about that. NFP has said that it will zero rate VAT for 15 grocery items. What items are these?
Vijay, before I answer that, let me just make this point. We announced all these broad policies 14 months ago. And the reason why we did that is because we wanted our people to understand our policies, critique our policies. And one of the reasons why people are interested in asking a lot of questions about our policies, because we said this 14 months ago, we distributed this, we had put it in the newspaper, so everybody had the access.
What items are these?
Had the access. And what we will do is, when we announce our detailed manifesto, we'll provide you the list of 15 items.
So you can't tell our listeners tonight what
not
items
today.
these will be?
Not today.
Not today, another day?
Not today. When this is our event. We probably launch the manifesto.
When would that be?
On the 29th.
29th, okay.
29th. And that's when I will be announcing the 15 items.
So 15 items.
Wait for 29th.
15 items to be announced. The listeners, you have to wait, because The manifesto is getting announced on the 29th of
29th,
October, and
yeah.
that's when NFP will give which items will be zero
Exactly,
rated.
exactly.
Now, where will you reduce taxes and duties, and where will you increase them?
Vijay, as I said, there are two things that I want to point to. While we're going to reduce VAT on 15 basic food items, we have also found that under this government, over the last several years, duties have gone up in most cases, from 27 to 32%. And apart from some of the food items, duty on some of the food items is as high as 40%. So what we're going to do is to look at these 15 items, reduce the VAT to zero, and then pick up items from that 15, and we will also tell you that, where we are going to also reduce the duty. Because combined with the VAT of 9%, combined with duties as high as 32% for some of the food items, when you look at port charges, when you look at all the other costs, it's actually quite high. So our objective would be to look at all this as a package, so that when we reduce VAT on those 15 items and reduce duties, we have a real difference to make in terms of the cost of food. And when people go to the supermarkets, it is really going to make a difference to the expenditure and how much they can buy from the supermarket for their families.
Which items are those that are fetching duty of about 32%, and which items are you looking at reducing duty on?
One of the example is, of course, dairy products, milk products, which attracts 32% duty. There are other items which some people consider luxury, for example, biscuits. Other items such as
this is for
this is, yeah.
This is for
Yeah.
imported items.
This is for imported items. I can actually give you a list of some of the duties that we have.
That'll be good for our listeners.
Yeah,
On which ones you're looking at
Yeah,
to reduce.
we're looking at. I mean, for example, things like pasta and noodles, 32%, plus of course you add 9% VAT.
Imported noodles.
That's right. Fruit juices, 32% plus VAT. Imported dairy and all other dairy products, 32% plus VAT. Things like any snack items, 32% plus VAT. And then, some other items which are not food items. And here we're also looking at reducing duty. And one that I have been concerned about is excise books. Flat $1 per book. And what we have is actually, by doing that, we have created a monopoly. And it's actually quite expensive for a lot of our school kids and families, children who come from poor families. Then you have bags, school bags, which attracts about 15% duty, 10% excise duty, apart from the import duty. And of course, you have 9% VAT. Shoes of all kinds, which includes shoes for school kids, 32% duty, plus 15% excise and 9% VAT. So these are just some of the examples. In fact, almost all the other food items except cereals, rice, dal, potatoes, onions attract import duty as high as about 40%.
Now,
so we are going to look at some of those items as well.
Mr. Prasad, my question is on imported items.
Yeah.
If you will reduce duty on imported items, of course, there's local industries, and there's a strong viewpoint about that.
Yeah.
Where we know there's companies in Fiji that are manufacturing biscuits.
Yeah.
We know there's companies in Fiji that are involved in dairy products.
Yeah.
We know that for some of exercise books, etc., we have local manufacturers. Now, if you reduce duty on the imported items, we may damage what is happening with our local industry.
We are going to look at all those.
How will you look at
those will be factors, because I'll just give you an example. For example, the duty on dairy products. all other importers except one company, is charged 32% duty. And that company, the exception, does not pay any duty. And of course, the objective was to promote the local dairy industry. Look at what has happened to the dairy industry. That company has had no interest in making sure that the dairy industry survives and increases local production. In fact, what we have now, the local milk production has gone down from about 10 to 11 million litres to about 6 million litres, and dairy farmers are crying. So sometimes the protection that you give to local industries is not necessarily going to help the local producers, and those we want to review. We want to look at it. And so that is why I'm saying that apart from reducing VAT on basic food items, those 15, we are also going to relook at the duty. And for some of them, it's just not the import duty, it's also excise duties.
Yeah,
so we're going to review
look at because imported items, if you reduce duty on a lot of imported items, there could be a possibility where you hurt the local industry.
Well, you have to balance it, Vijay, with how much you hurt the consumers and how much you hurt the industry. I think there has to be a balance, and what I feel that the balance is not there, and consumers, some of the manufacturers, and especially those who have monopolistic conditions, they are making money at the expense of the consumers. And we don't want that. We need to have a good balance there, and that is what we will do.
And the same question also about going back to dairy. The company that we're talking about, Fiji Dairy, had set up chilling plants in different parts of the country, which said that it will enhance milk production. According to your assessment, do you think it is still feasible to do that because those facilities have been set up?
Well, the data shows otherwise, and I think I had warned the government in 2014. And if you remember, I actually had moved a motion as to what should happen within the dairy industry. And I was right. What we've seen in the last 4 years is a huge decline, and dairy farmers are in real distress. So
with these chilling plants already set up, with the facility there was an anticipation that there will be more people coming with raw milk to ensure that there is increased production. If you do form government as leader of government, what will you do to ensure that this
we have already articulated our policy on dairy industry. We are saying that we're going to increase the price that the farmers get. You see, what has happened is the price that the farmers are getting for a litre of milk is actually not sustainable. It's not commensurate with the cost of production, and so farmers are really.
What would be the best price to give them?
Farmers are reeling under high cost, and obviously the government has not seen those benefits that it was expecting to be transferred as a result of what the company was going to do. For example, setting up, what we are going to do is we are going to provide direct support to the farmers for research, extension, training, control of TV, and by that kind of support we are going to raise production, and with that production we are also going to raise the price of milk, and we've said very clearly.
Continue to give support to the company?
Well,
because it's a local company?
Well, it's not about supporting a particular company. It's about the policy that the government has right now with respect to promoting the dairy industry, and we are saying that policy has not worked, and that is why we will have a different policy. We are going to provide direct support to the farmers so that the farmers raise production, and then we will review the whole decree or the act which led to the sale of Rewa Dairy and the current structure in the industry. So we're going to review that as well.
So the other issue is, if you will try to inject that for people to get more raw milk into production, at the same time you will reduce duty on imported dairy items. How will you balance
Vijay,
that?
we believe that the government got it all wrong in the first place. I mean, if the argument that government is using that because we have to protect this particular company by giving them a zero duty concession as opposed to 32% on every other importer, I mean, we could have done the same to Rewa Dairy if we had given them the support, if we had given them that concession. They probably would have made the money and provided enough support to the farmers through extension, research and training. So in my analysis, that decision to sell Rewa Dairy was wrong in the first place. Now we have this mess where we find that the whole dairy industry is on the verge of collapse. And we have to turn that back and we have...
And support the industry.
We have to support the industry and get that back on track.
Support the farmers and the company as well?
Well, no. What we are saying is that the company already has a concession. Company already has
but
made.
You said
company
if you
company has already.
You will remove that concession.
Company has already made millions of dollars as a result of that concession, and we haven't seen that millions of dollars translated into the support for the dairy industry. We don't see an increase in production. So that's where my problem is, and that is what we are going to review.
Thank you. So there will be a review on, and that's an example of production, local production, balancing it off with items that are being imported.
Yeah.
How do you balance that, whether that comes out in the favor of, as Professor Prasad said, in the favor of the consumers at the end of the day. Now, Ram Bhajan from Tavua has a question. Good evening, Ram.
My question to him is, will the Great Council of Chiefs be brought back when they will be in power?
You want me to?
Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. As you know, the 2013 Constitution has no provision for the Great Council of Chiefs. That's not an issue for us in terms of the party policy and the discussions that we are having. All I'm saying is that the 2013 Constitution, the 1997 Constitution had a provision for the GCC. 2013 Constitution doesn't have that.
So, will you look at bringing back the Great Council
Well,
of
the
Chiefs?
2013 Constitution doesn't have any provision, and to change the 2013 Constitution, Vijay, is almost impossible. You require about 75%
support in Parliament,
in
75% of registered voters. But Mr. Rambuka was here last week, and he said he'll just do it by regulation.
Well, I can't speak for Mr. Rambuka and
No, I'm
Sadalpa,
just
but as far as
will not bring back the GCC.
Well, it's not a question of bringing back or not bringing back. It's a question of.
That's a question from Ram
well,
Bhajan. He wants to know.
Well, my answer to him is that there is no provision in the 2013 Constitution.
So NFP is not bringing back the GCC.
Well, if it is not in the Constitution, the GCC had a constitutional role in the 1997 Constitution, and NFP was part of that process to formulate that Constitution. This Constitution was imposed by the military government. It's there. We now have a parliament under this Constitution. We are contesting an election under this Constitution. There is no provision for GCC, and so it's no point talking about a constitutional role for the GCC.
Now, in relation to just going back to some of the everyday issues, will you keep the personal income tax threshold at $30,000? What is your stand on the income tax threshold at the moment?
Vijay, that's something that we will keep. That is, and let me just say this again. When you have change in government in a democracy, you don't expect a new government to suddenly change every policy that the previous government has put in place. And that is why in a democracy, when governments put out policies, it's done through, if they bring out new laws, it's done through consultation. There is a proper process. And so we don't intend to change everything that this government has done. Of course, there are good social policies, for example, free bus fare, social welfare schemes, good elements of the TELS scheme. These are things that our government will keep, and most governments in democracies do that. So that is why when you have a parliament, you have this debate, about policies. So obviously, some of the things we will keep, but as I said, we have our broad policies. We can talk about that and why we are proposing these policies.
I wanted to ask that question because this was raised by a few people. They want to know if another party does come into government right now, if they're earning $30,000 or less and they're not paying that personal income tax. They want to know if NFP will change that.
No, if you read our manifesto, Vijay, you will see that we are benchmarking some of our merit-based means tested on 30,000. So it's very clear that we are going to keep that threshold.
Okay. So NFP confirming there are some of the policies that they will keep, and one of them is the income tax threshold will remain at $30,000, meaning that people who earn $30,000 or less will not pay personal income tax. Now on pensions, you've got a section on pensions. We will talk about that, but I've got a question here from Suresh from Nandi. Good evening, Suresh.
Mr. Professor Biman Prasad, because in his campaign, he said that he will make minimum wage of $5 an hour. So, how will he address this issue to the sugarcane farmers who are struggling, but they are surviving?
Thank you for that question. We've said very clearly in our policy 14 months ago that time is right now for Fiji. In fact, we should have considered this earlier, and I'll explain to you why. But the time is right now for Fiji to have a minimum living wage of $5 an hour. I know some people have been talking about sugarcane cutters. Obviously, sugarcane cutters don't get paid hourly; they get paid on tons of cane that they harvest. So that's a separate question.
So
but
they will not form
as far as the policy is concerned, we have announced it as our broad policy objective that when we come into government, we will implement a phased living wage of $5 an hour. And let me just say this, Vijay, while we are on this. Unlike some of the Fiji First candidates, including Mr. Ayaz Sayed Qayyum, where they're trying to say that we are now changing our tune. We never change our tune on our policy. Right from the day ago, on the 29th of July when we announced it, that is exactly what we said, and that is exactly what we are going to do. We are going to announce that within the first 100 days of being in government, we will, as stated in our policy, engage in extensive consultation with the stakeholders and bring in a legislation which will include a package and implement a policy of a minimum living wage of $5 an hour.
I think there's some confusion about that, and I remember giving you a call and you said when we'll have this show, we will discuss further about this. I think the time is right now for us to do that.
Sure.
Before we go there, so sugarcane cutters definitely not part of this package.
Well, sugarcane cutters are not paid on an hourly basis. They are paid on the basis of the tons of cane. So that's another discussion.
Separate discussion.
Whether they are getting enough per ton when they cut cane or not, that's a different question. This is for people who work for...
Isn't it unfair that you're leaving them
aside? No, we're not leaving them. We're not leaving them. All I'm saying is that because the system of payment for cane cutters is different, that's where we will have to
assess. You will also
assess.
Look into that?
Yes, whether they are getting a rate which is commensurate with the cost of living and the standards that we are going to set in terms of what the workers generally are going to get.
Okay, and you will announce that in your manifesto as well, how
No,
you will deal with sugarcane cutters?
We, as you know, for the sugar industry, Vijay, we have already announced that we will have a minimum guaranteed price of $100 per ton.
That's for the farmers.
That's for the farmers. But when the farmers' income goes up, the farmers would also be able to afford to pay the cane cutters more.
You'll expect them to
Well,
pay the cane cutters more.
We're not expecting them. What we are saying is that if the income goes up, right now they're struggling, in terms of the income, and this is why we're saying that is a sustainable, appropriate level of payment for a ton of cane in Fiji right now, because we know that the farmers are also struggling to pay and attract cane cutters to actually cut cane.
So you'll get the farmers, you'll sit them down to talk to them about also looking at how much they pay the cane
Yes,
cutters?
I think when we bring back democracy in the sugarcane industry, when we bring back the Sugarcane Growers Council, when we have the structures in place, those would be important discussions that the
I'm
farmers
sure-
and the growers and the cane cutters will have,
I'm sure-
and their representatives.
I'm sure the people in those cane belt areas are interested in that, on when those discussions will take place, because definitely they will be paying the cane cutters. When will you have that? Will there be anything in the manifesto?
Well, what I can say to the farmers, Vijay, is we have said very clearly that we will guarantee a minimum price of $100 per ton, and that would be if we come into government, or when we come into government, we will implement that from the 2018 cane season. And once that is done, the farmers would be able to assess what sort of income they have, what sort of savings they have, what sort of cost structure on the basis of what they earn now, will allow them to have the discussion with the stakeholders as to what the cane cutters will be paid. And obviously, if their income goes up, then the expectation is, as you said, that the farmers would be able, and the farmers would be quite happy.
Will you have a law also looking at that?
Well, we haven't thought about a law yet, but that is something that we can look at as well.
There you go, Professor Biman Prasad, saying that even the cane cutters, they will be looking at their living wage, and discussions will take place on that with the farmers. The details not confirmed yet. That will be confirmed in due time. Now, the government has stated that $2.68 an hour is for unskilled workers. What about the assessment? There was an assessment given by the Minister for Economy where he said where a family earns $6 an hour and they have to pay a house girl $5 an hour because if it's implemented. How will this work?
Well, the Minister for Economy is misleading the people of this country with respect to minimum living wage. Vijay, we haven't come up with $5 out of some thin air. We've done our calculations. We've looked at what is the prevailing poverty condition in this country. The basic needs poverty line, BPNL, based on 2013 and 2014 household income expenditure survey says that you got to have at least $220 for a household of 4 adults to be able to say that you are above the poverty line or just on the poverty line. So even if you have somebody on $5 an hour working for 40 hours a week or 45 hours a week, you probably have about $220. So what we are saying is, if you are saying that a household equivalent of 4 adults does not have $220 per week, that person will be in poverty. And that's why we are saying that the living wage concept means the minimum amount of household income you should have to be able to make ends meet. And that's why we are saying that a minimum living wage of $5 is appropriate for our country right now. Now, he's going around and he's scaring businesses and people by giving this example of house girls. The first question is, how many people in this country, how many households in this country actually employ house girls.
There's a lot.
I know, but you tell me how many. I can tell you,
Do you know?
that 28% of the people are living below the poverty line, and about 25% are just above the poverty line. So you are having a statistic which shows that about 50% of the households in this country are struggling to make ends meet. And that is why we are saying that we should work towards a law, a package that will ensure that every worker, whether it's a house girl, whether it's unskilled or skilled, should not have anything below $5 an hour wage when they work.
Going back to that question, how do you tackle that issue if the person is earning $6 an hour? You've now got that $5 an hour implemented. Will wages also go up for other people who are skilled workers?
Well, you see, Vijay, one of the, you can pick anecdotes, you can pick different examples. If you have a health policy, for example, you might find, 50 people or hundreds of people with personal conditions very different. And so any policy that you put in, you may have some aberrations where, people might feel, oh, I'm not getting what I should be getting in terms of this policy. But what we are saying as an overall objective for this country, as an overall policy for this country, nobody, no worker in this country, like most other countries which have minimum living wage, you establish that line and you say no one in this country, whether it is through a package, whether it's through by legislation, but the objective of the policy would be to ensure that no one earns below $5 if they are working for an hour, because that's what is needed to keep the people just on the line above or below poverty.
I'm sure a lot of people are listening who have house girls. They have a husband and wife going to work and making ends meet, and so the house girl is there. And they may be getting, you would have heard stories, some house girls get $40,
Vijay,
$50 a week.
let me come back to the point that I have said.
No, I'm just asking you the question. I'm just asking you the question because we know of house girls getting $40, $50
I know your question.
Now, how can you handle that, knowing that those families are listening out there?
All I want to say to those families who may have this concern, and if the example that you are giving is a good example where both of them are working, both of them may have hourly wage rate of $6 or $7, we are saying in our policy that when we come into government, within the first 100 days, we are going to have a proper consultation. We're going to develop a legislation, and we are saying that we are going to develop a package of policies. So, you don't expect me to give all the details about how this is going to be done, but all I can ensure everyone in this country, including those who may be worried about employing a house girl for $5 if the wage rate is $6 or $7 an hour.
Or maybe lower than that.
Or maybe lower than that. That we will have a package which will look after the interest of everyone. And I can assure the people of this country that no worker will lose a job, no business will run out of business.
How will you make sure of that?
Because we are going to have a legislation, we're going to have a package which will be in the interest of not only the workers but also in the interest of
so
the
you
business.
will be subsidizing those people?
It's not about subsidizing, Vijay. If you look at we can spend another hour talking about the economic.
I'm just asking you.
Have to give some money to them. No, that's what I'm saying. We can talk about the logic and the economics of how this is going to be done, but when we come into government, when we are doing the legislation, when we're doing the package, all these issues will be taken into consideration. We will look at all the data, how many people are in that category, and on the basis of that, our package will be the right package, will address all these concerns.
So, going back to what's in your broad policy, you've said the current national minimum wage of $2.68 an hour will be replaced by a phased-in living wage
Yeah.
of $5 an hour. And not as a standalone measure, but as a group of policies directly and indirectly working in tandem to achieve it. Now, my question is on the $5 an hour, because the issue here is about a phased-in living wage. Now, at what level will you start? Will you start at $5 or you'll have it in phases?
Vijay,
In stages.
when we talk about phased implementation, I know some people are talking about stage, some people are talking about progressive. All I want to say is that when we talk about phased implementation, it's a transition from the old to the new. And if you read it carefully, let's not get stuck into the semantics of it. What I'm saying to you is that there will be no exception. When we get a package, when we get a law, when we get a set of policies, packaged together with what the law is going to say, that will ensure that no worker in this country will earn below a minimum living wage that we feel should be what is necessary to ensure that people are able to make ends meet. And that's based on the 2013-2014 household income expenditure survey. Let me just tell you one more thing, Vijay. That's 2013 and 14. Now, the next survey was due in 2018, and I'm told that it might be done in 2019. My assessment is that between 2013 and 14 survey and the next one that we're going to have in 2019, in fact, we should have had that in 2018, that if you look at what has happened, I think we might have as much as 12% increase in terms of the cost of living. So, technically speaking, by 2019, we would need the basic needs poverty line maybe $250 instead of $220. So what we will do in 2019 when we get the law, we're actually addressing what was the situation in 2013 and 14. So even with $5, we will still find that many families in this country will struggle to make ends meet. So all I can say to everyone out there, that all the international evidence around the world shows that when you increase minimum wage and in comparison, in relation to the cost of living, it's always good for the workers, it's always good for the business, it's always good for the country. And in many countries, the evidence shows that if you keep the minimum wage too low, in fact, businesses also become very inefficient. I know the Employers Federation gave us statistics. They said the productivity level in this country is about 50%. Now, they should also be concerned about it. They should find out why the productivity is just 50%. So, these are all the variables, Vijay, that we will
You're
take
on
into
Straight Talk, Professor Biman Prasad. Straight answer.
Yeah.
Will the $5 an hour be immediate or in stages?
It will be an immediate
$5 an hour.
Immediate implementation as part of the package.
So by when, if you do come into government after November 14th?
Vijay, I've said this to you very clearly, and I don't think I need to repeat that. In first 100 days, we will bring out a legislation after appropriate consultation with all the stakeholders, and we will announce a package of policies and the law that will determine
$5 living wage.
$5 minimum living wage in the country.
Thank you, Professor Biman Prasad. In the first 100 days, $5 minimum wage is a package to be confirmed after consultations in the first 100 days of government. Now, we've got a question from Deepak from Suva. Good evening, Deepak. Okay, Deepak is asking, he's actually sent a text message. Deepak from Suva is asking, what will happen to those that are earning $5 at the moment when NFP implements $5 minimum wage rate?
Vijay, that's a good question. Obviously, there will be adjustments, and employers know that. I have talked to a number of businesses, who are telling me quite bluntly that they are quite happy to pay $5 an hour, and the only reason why they are not paying it now is because if you don't have a law, then if one employer, a very similar employer, pays higher, the other one doesn't pay, there will be a lot of distortions in terms of prices, in terms of profit, in terms of what they do. So yes, there would be adjustments in
Other rates as well.
in other rates. Those rates which may be just closer to $5. So if somebody is getting $5.50, somebody is getting $5.80, there would be adjustments, and we envisage that as an adjustment that should happen, and that also is not going to be a bad thing for the workers, for the businesses, and for the economy as a whole.
Professor Prasad, just on the issue about minimum wage, the other question has been raised about your party. There's public comments been made, and it has come out in relation to business people in your party, whether they pay $5 an hour.
Well, I just
They've made
answered that
public
question.
comments. I'm just asking you.
Yeah,
You have this in your manifesto,
yeah.
but some of the business people in your party are paying below that amount, but you have this philosophical belief. If you do have this philosophical belief as a party, why these people are not paying $5 an hour already?
Well, I think that's a ridiculous question and ridiculous proposition, and a cheap political propaganda by Ayaz Sayed Qayyum and his candidates in the Fiji First Party, because right now this is a broad party policy, and I just explained to you that I don't expect just because there are businessmen in the party that suddenly they're going to raise it to $5, because there are obvious issues there. That if you're a same business, if one supermarket starts paying $5 and the others are not paying $5. No. We believe in that. They believe in that. And once
So
we
they
have
believe in that, but they will only pay it when there's a law.
when there is a law, when there is a package, because you ought to create a level playing field. You can't just expect one businessman to take all the hit, because if you don't expect the others to raise their wages, they would be able to undercut another business, and it's not good for it. It's the government's job to ensure, unlike this government, we are going to ensure that there's going to be a level playing field. We will be treating every businesses in the same manner.
And so, the law and expect everybody to pay.
Expect everybody to pay, and it's actually quite ridiculous for Ayaz Sayed Qayyum to actually raise that issue about NFP businessmen.
Now, in relation to the question of minimum wage, we have addressed that on why you're doing it. So that question has been answered. Anil from Navua. We'll go to a break and come back with more questions on Straight Talk. We have the guest tonight, National Federation Party leader, Professor Biman Prasad.
Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan continues.
Welcome back. In studio tonight on Straight Talk is National Federation Party leader Professor Biman Prasad. Professor Prasad, a question has come through from Ezra, and she's calling from Lautoka. She's texting the message, is asking, what assurance can Biman Prasad give to unskilled workers that they will not lose jobs if minimum wage rate is implemented at $5?
As I said, Vijay, there will be a law, and I can say this quite categorically. No worker is going to lose his or her job, and no business is going to run out of business when we implement that package and law.
And details on that package will be revealed in the first 100 days.
Exactly.
Iqbal from Davui Levu is asking, will NFP continue the free bus fare and school fees, or will they take it away?
Well, I said that, Vijay, at the very beginning, governments don't take away good policies, and I see free bus fare, social welfare schemes, free education grants. These are good social policies, and NFP has always advocated some of these policies throughout its history, and obviously
So you'll keep them?
we will keep that. Yeah.
Sailosi from Raiwai is asking, will there be items in the 15 grocery list that you've got, which will be revealed on 29th October, because you don't want to reveal it on Straight Talk tonight.
Yeah.
Will there be any items that cause NCDs?
I can't give you the details. I mean, NCDs, Vijay, as we all know, it's not necessarily with respect to what you consume, but sometimes how much you consume. So, yes, we will ensure that the 15 items are items that people need on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and that they're good for health.
There you go, Sailosi. There will be no 15 items that will cause NCDs, according to Professor Prasad.
If you consume it in the right amounts.
In moderation. Now, a lot has been said about economic performance. We've got a lot of commentators talking about it. The facts are there. We've had economic growth. The ADB, IMF, they've all said that Fiji's economy is growing. Even Fiji's economy even grew in 2016 when we had Cyclone Winston. What is your plan on growth?
Well, Vijay, let me just say first on the growth. Yes, I mean, we have seen growth rates between 3 to 3.5% in the last 3 or 4 years. But if you look at the average growth in the last 10 or 11 years, it's fairly modest. You know, it's hovering around 2%. And the growth that we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years is growth based on tourism, which is under strain. We should have been having about 1 million tourists. We're not close to even 800.
We have 885,000.
Yeah, it's close. It's about 800.
885,000.
Yeah, okay, you know, around 800. You can say 900.
So I've gone above 800,000.
But you know, tourism industry is under strain. The other reason why we've had GDP growth is because of spending. And this government has been a very expensive government, and much of that spending is, of course, also through borrowing. So if you look at the real sectors of the economy, tourism is a services sector. If you look at the real sectors of the economy, you look at sugar, you look at dairy, you look at agriculture, you look at manufacturing. And the main issue for me, Vijay, when we come into government, would be to create the right business climate. If you look at the business environment in Fiji, if you look at the World Bank Ease of Doing Business ranking, this is very important, because when investors look at Fiji, when they're looking at it from outside, even our domestic investors, they look at these indicators because these are very important indicators. We were 34. We were ranked 34 in 2006 on the ease of doing business. We are now down to 101 on the ease of starting a business. It is very important. And I said this in Parliament. I actually listed why our ease of starting a business ranking has gone down from 55 right to 160 and there are only 190 countries ranked by the World Bank. So what we are going to do, and I can say this quite confidently, I've seen this in Parliament over the last 4 years. We've had so many laws, we have so many regulations. In fact, a large number of businesses in this country, especially small businesses, are finding it very, very onerous to actually do business in this country because the cost of...
What will you change?
We are going to change some of these regulations. For example, when I listed these 10 or 11 requirements that you need to meet to actually go to the local government. This government has been talking about the one-stop shop. So we have said very clearly that we are going to streamline some of these processes. We are going to remove some of those unnecessary regulations.
What type of regulations are you planning to remove?
And we will make the business environment very conducive to investors.
What type of regulations are you planning to remove, to get rid of?
First of all, we are going to look at what is the requirement for registering a business. And we want to establish a one-stop shop so that the ministries of, say, local government, immigration, trade and investment division of the ministry, lands department, they should be able to come together. They should have a process so that number of days that are required to establish a business or start a business to get the approval is shortened. And the World Bank ease of starting a business is ranking us so low, partly because they are saying that all these requirements that you have to actually start a business or get a business registered is too onerous, too expensive, too time consuming.
So you will change that?
We will change that, and we'll make sure that we'll reduce the number of days that, in fact, it can be easily done. If you stipulate that, no ministry, you have a timeline. That if you have an application,
still go from one ministry to another, but less time.
Less time, and you can stipulate that.
What about having a one-stop shop?
That's what I'm saying. One-stop shop would require that every section there, the one-stop shop deals with it in a very shortest possible time.
We have a question from Anil from Tavua. He's asking, will NFP only give $100 for a ton of sugarcane, or they will also give grants and subsidies for fertilizer?
That's a very good question. We are saying, Vijay, that the minimum granted price, of course, will be $100 per ton. And we understand that the subsidies that the farmers are getting for weedicide and pesticides
fertilizer
and cane development program, all that would be maintained, because
so you'll continue that and you'll give $100 a ton.
Exactly, because our objective is to raise the production up from 1.6 million tons to about 3 million tons, so that we can have economies of scale within the sugar industry. We can run the mills efficiently, and that is why we are saying that we need to guarantee a minimum price of $100 per ton over the next 4 years.
NFP leader Professor Biman Prasad in studio on Straight Talk tonight. Now, Mr. Prasad, according to your broad policies that you have announced, you said that you will bring back the retirement age to 60 years and guaranteed job till retirement for civil servants, as you will have permanent contracts. Now, when will you be doing that?
That would be our immediate priority, Vijay, because we believe that the retirement age of 55 is quite ridiculous. People use this argument, quite erroneously, to say if you reduce the retirement age, you're going to create more jobs. You're actually not creating more jobs. All you're doing is replacing jobs. I mean, at 55 years, in many of the professional areas, especially teaching, I mean, you need, at 55, people become the best teachers. And I have taught, when I started teaching, I can say that, we were not the best teachers, but teaching quality comes through experience. And there are many other professions in the civil service which require that kind of experience. So you need people at all levels. And I think the policy of 55 years retirement age is quite ridiculous. And because the government has brought this policy in the civil service, there are some private companies who are also trying to retire people at 55. I mean, if you look at people at 55, they're still very
When will
capable of contributing for the next.
When will you implement the 60-year retirement age?
Well, Vijay, we will have a list of things that we will do in the first 100 days.
Will that be one of those
And
things?
it's possible that this would be one of the things
What
that we will
about
do.
the permanent civil servant contracts?
That will be part of that.
First 100 days.
First 100 days, I mean, it may take, as you know, we'll have to look at the practicality of
We have
addressing
people